Israel said Friday it plans to take over Gaza City, an escalation of the country's war instead of a march towards peace. Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu placing the blame firmly on the terrorist group Hamas.
Our goal is not to occupy Gaza. Our goal is to free Gaza, free it from Hamas terrorists. The war can end tomorrow if Gaza, or rather if Hamas lays down its arms and releases all the remaining hostages.
All right, joining us now is our international correspondent, Blake Sifton in Tel Aviv. Good morning, Blake. Let me ask you, Israel has claimed responsibility for the deaths of several journalists in a strike on Gaza City, including Al Jazeera correspondent al-Sharif. So what happened, and do people believe he was targeted?
Good morning, Holly. al-Sharif, as well as 4 other staff members of Al Jazeera, were killed early this morning when they were in a tent near al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. That was struck in an Israeli drone attack. The Israeli military has accused Anas of being a member of Hamas. They say he was in charge of a unit responsible for launching rockets at Israel. Now, in the last few weeks, Al Jazeera has raised the alarm, saying that his life was at risk, and the American Press Freedom Organization, the Committee to Protect Journalists, as well as the UN, had urged the international community to protect him under these threats. They said that the Israeli allegations against him were unsubstantiated. Now, these deaths, we need to remember, are only the latest in a long string of killings of journalists in Gaza. The Committee to Protect Journalists has counted 186 members of the press who have been killed in Gaza. Of course, Israel has not allowed the international press into the Strip, except on very closely monitored embeds with the Israeli military. So the bulk of the reporting and the bulk of these deaths have been, the entirety of these deaths have been Palestinian local journalists in Gaza. A study by Brown University found that this conflict in Gaza is the single deadliest conflict for journalists in history. And not only that, it found that this conflict in Gaza, more journalists have died than died in World War I, World War II, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Vietnam, and the wars in Yugoslavia combined.
Wow, those are startling numbers. So, Blake, what's the latest on Netanyahu's plan for Gaza? He says he wants to get control, but then what?
Yeah, so speaking to the press on Sunday night, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu doubled down on plans to widen the war in Gaza. He said that Israel has no choice but to finish the job and defeat Hamas. However, he clarified that this plan is actually going to be much more expansive than we heard following the Security Cabinet meeting on Friday. We had heard that it would only be Israeli forces pushing into and occupying Gaza City. He said they're going further. He said they're going into central Gaza near Deir al-Balah, as well as El Mawasi in the south. Now, that would bring all remaining territory in Gaza that Israel currently doesn't control in Israeli hands. Of course, this is where the 2 million Palestinian civilians are sheltering amid the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. So the international community has condemned this plan at a special session of the UN Security Council yesterday. They called it collective punishment. They said it would violate international humanitarian law. Now, domestically in Israel, he's also under incredible amount of pressure. The family members of the hostages have called this plan a death sentence for their loved ones. They fear that as Israeli forces push into new areas, Hamas may execute the hostages. On Saturday, they held a very large protest here in Tel Aviv and in other locations across the country. And on Sunday, they have vowed to shut down the economy in a one-day general strike to push the government not to go forward with this plan. Now, crucially, Netanyahu is also under a pressure from his far-right coalition members because they feel that this plan doesn't go far enough. Several of them have threatened to resign from the government because they think this is all just a ploy and that he's not serious, and that this is a strategy to pressure Hamas to come back to the negotiating table in ceasefire talks. But Netanyahu is under an extraordinary amount of pressure from all sides, but he seems intent on pushing forward with this plan.
All right, Scripps News international correspondent Blake Sifton for us in Tel Aviv. Thank you for that update, Blake.